Journeys Ahead. Lineage. Chapter 6. Secrets and Lies. Written and narrated by T.S. Proart. There was only one word that could describe Void's emotions as he walked through that door. But the word itself couldn't be forged from his mouth. Nothing could leave his lips from the uncertainty and anxiety that clenched its claws around his beating, energized heart. Following behind Joby with quiet steps, Void marched after his niece as the arched door to the room sealed shut from behind with a concealing clank. Darkness instantly engulfed the two sparks, but due to a long-rounded and stretched glass-tinted window at the back of the room, the orange and blue lights from the reformatter glinted their way inside, as well as along the floor. Although still a tad dark against these surrogate nightlights, Void gently ignited his electrified crest into a blue glow to act as a lantern for both Joby as well as himself. The air in the room was cold, walk-in freezer levels of cold. Small flakes of dusty ice particles drifted their way up from vents in the floor that pulsated dimly with these same orange and blue hues that left Void feeling almost drawn towards. His mind and thoughts were as though to be waves in the sea, splashing to never find a stable pattern, mixing and churning against the tides that was his outlook upon Core and what he planned to do. What do you mean your father lies? Void wanted to know as the small yellow and purple sparklet approached what appeared to be a control station to the right, yet stopping as her uncle spoke. Slowly turning around, Joby locked her honey-shaded eyes with Void's dim blue glints, now losing the anger and falling to a state of sorrow and anxiety, the one Void recognized from before.
Because he's been lying to you, Shida, and the others. He speaks only half the truth. For everything.
Joby explained with her softened voice before turning and raising her hands up. From them slithered outward a pair of glowing yellow matter hands that typed upon the control deck that she was too small to reach. Void was still in shock by this display of power, the matter-like essence that came out of her metallic skin. It was like a summer shade of gold that glinted with the smallest hints of stardust. It was breathtaking, yet left Void pondering all the same. Sparks had abilities unlike most beings, but this was a whole different form of power.
I tried to bring you here the other day, to show you the truth, but Atlas and Evelyn would not have let me. This is my one chance. Look.
Joby expressed as a sudden hologram appeared before view in an orange shade of light. Shielding his eyes and approaching to stand beside his niece, Void caught the sight of several spheres appearing before view, all labeled with M levels above them. Some of the spheres were larger than the other, while more were smaller and less dense in shape. About 10 or so more of these rounded forms emerged to light at a higher hue, leaving Void a tad confused to what he was looking at. Are these conductors? The spark asked as he tilted his horned head and read the M levels upon each of them. 16%, one said. 4%. 37%. All were under the rate of 50% or less. Small numbers in terms of what Core and the others were apparently searching for.
No. These were planets.
Joby suddenly revealed to Void's sudden surprise and confusion. Were? He inquired before one by one, the planet-like holograms flashed in the shades of green, with a big label of spark text atop them. Snapping his head back towards these holograms, Void read the label that was adorned upon them. It was one simple word that left a twist of peculiarity in his mind. Extracted, they said. Joby, what am I looking at exactly? Void inquired as his face dropped to a dour expression. What did it mean, he asked within. What did the term extracted relate to? What did Joby imply by they were planets? So many thoughts began to eat at Void's head, until his niece began to speak once more.
Loss. Greed. Selfishness.
she expressed before looking down to see that Gluppy had slithered his way towards her. The little spud had always resided within this room, and had always found a comfort to Joby.
Gorp.
He croaked out, asking for the little spark to pick him up. Reaching down, Joby did as such and placed the little guy over her shoulder with a small huff.
Have you ever stopped to wonder why this vessel is called the Reformator?
Joby asked as she began to type away into the control deck once more, up until hesitating to click an enter key. I hadn't given it much thought. Void replied with a growing pit in his stomach. Closing her eyes with a shaken breath, Joby clicked down upon the enter key and brought forth images to be seen. Horrible images. Some were of the Reformator's blueprints, while others appeared to be images of what seemed to have been drained out worlds. Screen caps of planets big and small appeared to view, all clearly being from different realms and planes in reality, but all having been turned to a gray to even cracking apart forms at the seams, like the soul of the worlds themselves had been sucked dry. Other photos then appeared to be on the grounds of these worlds, showing things that looked almost identical to war. The images were clearly taken from body cams of some sort. Void couldn't be certain, but what he could see were these strange, tendril-looking creatures that were jumping in and out of photo frames, some blurry, while others more refined.
This ship, this vessel that you were promised wouldn't hurt people, does exactly what you fear.
The sparklet blurted as she stared on with sorrow towards the array of images that appeared after the other.
The Reformator's purpose is to reform matter. It's built to drain worlds, extract their life source and the energy that collects into the matter that you've grown accustomed to, the one Father's obsessed with.
Joby dropped upon her uncle as she looked to the floor and fiddled with her hands, all while feeling a wave of anxiety stab her heart. Slowly turning his head with weary eyes, Void looked down towards Joby with a look of pure disbelief on display. He wasn't sure if what she had told him was real or not. It almost sounded too ludicrous to be true. What? That can't be what this is. Kors said that this thing just absorbs data, not... Void found himself trailing off as the images of otherworldly beings being absorbed, or rather disintegrated by the tendril monsters appeared, all while some showed off images of Atlas, Evelyn, and even Kor in the background, not fighting the creatures, but rather looking to command them. That can't be. Void repeated as Joby continued the sight through the files.
These creatures you're seeing, they call them ameliorites. They're creations of Fathers designed to extract the people of the world first. If not, they're used to fight back against those who may rebel against their attack. It's their defense. I think that's what you call them?
Joby went on as images of the ameliorites' blueprints were put on display. They were strands of dark matter taken into large humanoid forms, designed to absorb energy from those unlucky enough to cross their path, is what Void gathered as he read through a documented bio upon the screen. It then went on to describe when their job was done, they would wait upon the world for when extraction begins, a large beam that would shoot into a planet's core to extract all forms of life from within. This can't be. This can't possibly. Void went on as Joby clicked a button and ignited something in front of them to light. Appearing in a row, and then again and again, emerged an array of medium vats of matter on both the spark's left and right. Each one went from orange to blue, bubbling with the same essence that made up the larger matter vat within the Reformator center.
I'm sorry, but it's true. Take a look.
Joby expressed in a dour tone as Void caught his breath and slowly approached one of the many matter vats. His heart felt to be skipping at several beats, while his legs began to buckle. This couldn't be true, Void repeated to himself. How could someone like Core do something as heinous as this? Something wasn't right in his eyes. This couldn't possibly be the work of his brother. Surely there had to be a misunderstanding. How could Core Novason, Atlas Scrape, and Evelyn Scorch, 3 people Void knew to be good at heart, do something as taboo as this?
The reformatter was designed to draw itself towards worlds with high M rates. Once stationed, the ship anchors itself down and unleashes the ameliorates upon the ground.
Joey went on as memories flashed within her mind. Dark memories.
Once it's ready, Father charges the matter vat to the spike spear below the ship before draining the world out by its core.
Joby continued with a deep pain in her voice as she watched Void approach the orange and blue casings of matter.
Since I could remember, I watched worlds burn, seas boil the crust, all while being told that all of this was for a better future. Our future.
Joby went on and on as Void found himself staring into his own reflection. His face warbled in the orange liquid, making it a bombastic, gelatin shape that in turn presented the spark with his own hurting shaded eyes.
The other day, they planned for extraction again, on a world with only a 5% M count. A world that was so small that I couldn't comprehend why Father would target such a place. After realizing it, I snapped.
Joby boasted as a clawed and slimy black hand smashed against the matter vat, scaring Void so bad that he fell upon his rear. Gasping and looking up, Void watched with stunned and horrified eyes as one of the tendril, humanoid-looking monstrosities drifted itself in the view through the thick, matter-like liquid. The creature was tall and had patches of torn open holes within its wire-like skin. A head adorned with a spiderweb-like eye looked to glare down upon Void as it audibly spoke in the most hoarse and disgusting tone he had ever heard.
Open.
The voice sounded famished, tired and strained, like a soul who had no other goal in life besides pure sorrow for its own sins. Sins that it found pleasure in committing. Sins that it was designed to enact upon. By Matira. Void stuttered out as another one of the beasts emerged within a blue vat of matter beside the orange one. Raising its lanky fingers up, it pressed its hands against the glass, looking to even breathe against its casing to fog it up.
Open.
It beckoned as it slowly clawed at its cage. Another said, as several of the experiments drifted in the view from the cloudy and murky sludge they resided within. Void was in shock. These creatures, these monsters, were like living strands of wire, pulsating, bulging with glints of dark sludge. This sludge, Void noticed, had glowing hues of reds, yellows, greens, and purples, the same shades as the conductors Void had taken down. They all twitched, bashed their heads against their confines, and sputtered out gurgled animalistic barks. A sense of pain radiated off these so-called ameliorates, a pain that sent shivers down Void's spine.
I was the one who crashed the reformatter.
Joby suddenly blurted, leaving Void to whirl his head back towards her with his eyes filled with dread.
I couldn't bear to see another world as small as that just be destroyed. When they weren't looking, I sabotaged the control system, forced the conductors into an overdrive, and sent the ship crashing, all in a vain effort to save that small little world.
Slowly standing to his feet, Void ignored the muttering creatures at his side and approached his niece, who looked to be on the verge of tears.
The conductors pulled us into this reality upon release, being drawn to the nearest source of matter they could find. That being your home. I didn't plan for that to happen. I thought maybe if I broke the system, I'd...
Joby then began to sniffle and shake, all while Void gently took a knee to be eye level with her.
I just didn't want to see anyone else get hurt. I didn't want Father's army of monsters to tear apart any more lives. I thought that maybe if I crashed the ship, no one would suffer. Like I've suffered.
Joby weakly expressed as Void, with sorrow in his heart, reached his hands out and held both sides of her small face, using his thumbs to wipe away her noticeably golden-shaded tears. Joby, Void said without follow-up. He didn't know what to say. All of what he had just taken in was almost ludicrous to think. Could Core and the others really have done something as heinous as all that? It was impossible, Void rationalized. Core was a good man, a good brother. So was Atlas and Evelyn. The way they spoke to him, the way they reasoned. Was it all truly a lie? A trick? Why wouldn't they have told him? Unless his world, Jaida's, Nox, everyone that took him in, was their world next? Suddenly from beside them appeared another holographic diagram, one that showed the title, Project JB 21-D46804, Joby.
They don't just poke me with needles, they take me apart and put me back together. My body is constantly being reworked, hooked up to large and scary cables. I'm doused in vats of matter by the week. My body is fused to my head. My abilities.
Joby went on as she looked down to her shaking cyborg hands.
Father calls me his child of light. Says that I am beyond balance. My energy has forced me to evolve and develop thoughts faster than anyone else that's my age. My body adapts and learns beyond the average spark, and Father wants to apparently make sure I'm safe. But what he really wants is to crack the code in my genetics for the future sparks he plans to make.
Joby explained as Void winced in dismay to her words.
I'm just a lab rat. All I've known is white walls and the feeling of fear. Fear that they have brought to so many. I'm not scared of needles, Uncle Void. I'm scared that they'll kill me in one of their tests.
Joby was now cracking down. The little girl was without a doubt petrified and scared beyond reason. It broke Void's heart.
I told you not to trust them. And now your world is in serious danger. They're going to extract it like so many of the others.
Joby revealed as her little legs began to buckle under her feet, while her eyes doused her cheeks in rivers of tears. Void's head felt to almost shatter under his own thoughts. Everything he had just learned, all of it from start to finish, felt like a roller coaster that just refused to stop. He wanted to puke, cry, something, anything. He knew something was up since he reunited with Core and the rest. He had always felt it. Yet Core and the others' mere presence alone was enough to blindside him against his own judgment. As much as Void didn't want to believe it, the beckoning creatures, the files, as well as Joby's now nearly sobbing body, all but told him that it was the ugly truth. Shh, 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 it's okay. It's okay. Void beckoned towards his niece as he reached his arms around her and pulled her in close. The little girl was practically falling apart. What sounded to be years' worth of pent-up trauma and fear was now spilling from her crying body. It's okay. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. I got you. Uncle Void's got you. The spark continued as he too tried to hold back tears. It was all so much. All of this was so much to take in. Void knew now he had to get the facts straight with his brother. He had to confront and demand to know what was actually going on. Gently pulling Joby back, Void wiped her tears and rubbed the side of her head. She looked so broken. That was the only way he could discern it. Just a broken little girl who was scared of the world around her. Come on, stay by my side. Void beckoned as he held out his hand for Joby, who gripped it back with both of hers.
You're not mean like father,
she said, leaving Void's almost crying face to wince harder to the circumstances. What was he gonna do, he thought? What was he gonna say? Is what Void questioned. Until suddenly, the door to the room opened with a familiar voice asking aloud. Void? Whirling around and putting Joby behind his leg, Void met the eyes of Kor, who stood in the open doorway with a bowl of pasta in his hands. His orange eyes had widened, and his mouth had fallen to that of a closed, little, and shocked frown. Behind him stood both Atlas and Evelyn, the two of which had their eyes widened as well, but with a more worried and concerned look on display. The three Sparks could see it: the holograms, the activated matter vats, and the look in Void's eyes, the confusion, the shock, the terror. He knew, they realized. He knew. Oh, shit. Atlas muttered as Kor slowly stepped inside and placed the bowl of spaghetti atop an operating table. Eye contact was not broken between the brothers, as Kor ever so gently maneuvered his way forwards. With each step he took, Void took one back, protecting Joby as he stared silently at his brother with the eyes of a hawk. Void, Kor softly muttered before suddenly being interrupted. You what? Void bluntly asked with a slight shake in his words. Following behind Kor, quietly approached Atlas and Evelyn, who were clearly uneasy with the current circumstances. You what? Void repeated as Joby peeked out from behind his leg with a shaken, teary-eyed stare. Upon seeing his daughter, Kor gulped down a wave of sudden anxiety as he tried to find a way to speak properly on what was now facing him. Orange sweat seeped down his brow, all while a sense of dread engulfed his heart. This wasn't how he had planned to approach this. It's hard to explain. Void interrupted again as he glanced from his brother, his friends, and then to the overhaul of files and images at his side. What in Matira's name is this? What the hell is going on? Void demanded to know with a booming set of words that made Evelyn a little scared of the smaller Spark's presence. Void, I know this looks bad, but let me just... Kor tried to reason as he took a small step forward, only for Void to take one step back. Void, all of this, we wanted to tell you sooner, but we wanted more time to... Kor tried to reason while Void held his fist clenched down by his sides. You're gonna answer me right now, Kor. What I'm seeing here, is it true? Did you destroy worlds? Void asked, wanting to cut through all the BS. Does this machine that I helped you three fix destroy worlds? Void demanded as his face winced with a surge of spark-like rage. Placing his hands on his hips, Kor looked to the floor and released a deep sigh before explaining on with his side of the coin. It doesn't destroy worlds. It recycles its essence, turns its living energy into light and dark matter. Kor explained before Joby stepped from Void's side and spoke aloud. Bullcrap! She yelled, catching everyone off guard with her sudden and crude tone. It doesn't matter what it does! You're still killing innocent people! Joby exclaimed, causing Kor's face to wince with a twinge of dismay. Sweetheart, watch your tongue. Kor replied before Void stepped forward in a sparking step. How many? He asked, causing Kor to raise an eyebrow.
What?
The older Novasun retorted, leaving Void to speak up once more. How many worlds did you do this to? Holding his tongue, Kor closed his eyes and looked to the side, all while Void repeated, How many? He went with no answer. How many did you destroy? We lost count! Atlas suddenly exclaimed as he lit a cigarette with clear regret muffling his tone. We lost count. The four-legged spark repeated as he looked to Void with a sense of pain in his heart. Lost count? Void repeated back as Kor opened his eyes with a shaken breath. How could you do such a thing? What the hell gave you the mindset that this is an okay thing to do? Void's voice sounded to be on fire. He was enraged, burnt to his soul. All he could feel was raw, unbridled pain towards this fact. Void, everywhere in the multiverse, there exists an almost 1-to-1 copy of a world we extract. There are billions upon billions of the same exact world with the same exact people living upon it. Our reasoning is that it wouldn't matter if one is taken away, because another exists just one dimension hop away. In a sense, for us, it's a necessary sacrifice to save our species. Kor spoke with a dipping dour in his words. What he said sounded to have come from his mind, but deep within, his heart was beating out a different tune, one with regret, but determination for his own goals. So let me get this straight, because one world has more matter than the other, it gives you the right to drain it? For this! Void exclaimed with disgust as he gestured to all of his surroundings. You mean to tell me that all of this matter that you collected came from genocides that you have lost count of? Void went on with a burning pulse to his voice. Don't call it that. Kor boasted back as his brow furrowed. No, that's exactly what this is. You do realize just how messed up that whole mindset is, right? Void continued as his horns began to spark with an angered electricity. Little one, if you were to just... Evelyn began before Void pointed a finger towards her. Don't call me that, not after keeping this shit from me. The spark snapped before returning his sights upon Kor. Do you plan to do this to my home? Are you going to destroy everything that I've come to know and love? Are you going to turn my newfound life to ash? Void roared as he clenched his fist once more with pent-up frustration. Your world has the highest M count out of every single planet, dimension, whatever it may hold. Void, I'm sorry, but the only way to save our species is to extract your world's essence. Kor expressed with a hand gesture towards his brother. I know that sounds bad, but I promise you that your newfound family won't be in the crossfire. Everyone you know, everyone you haven't told us that you care about, will be brought aboard the reformator and they won't be extracted. Kor went on before Void shouted and cursed at his face. Are you fucking serious right now? What about everyone else in this world? What about their families, their dreams, their hopes for the future? You mean to tell me that you're okay with just ripping that all away for your own desires? Void boasted as he and Joby took a few more steps back. Void, listen to me. Is our race not worth the loss of one copy and paste of a world? There are countless other versions of this planet, this Earth out there. Ones who don't have a Jida or a Knock or whatever the hell their names are. Other Earths exist where you can settle down. What are you truly losing at the cost of sacrificing this copy in the multiverse? Kor asked as his veins began to shimmer orange along with his body, looking to almost drip. Because every copy and paste has lives on it, Kor. Lives that are full of dreams and desires for the next day. Even if I were to go along with this nightmarish plan, I doubt Jai and the rest would even be okay with the prospect of losing the home they grew up in. Void spat as his veins shimmered with a bright and electrical blue. I can't believe you. You lied to me. You all lied to me, my family. You let me help you repair this This death trap without even telling me what it was fully for! Void practically screamed with rage, fueling in his soul. No, this... You're doing exactly the opposite of what the spark stood for. Void began as he and Joby inched further back and away from Core, who was noticeably starting to glow orange beneath his panel lines. What you're doing. This is no different than how the glitch took our home. This is the same shit that fell upon us. You're bringing the same pain that we felt all those years ago, and you're doing that to others. The hell was all that talk for those we lost in honor if you're enacting destruction upon worlds we sparks were born to protect? Void had now lost it. He was livid. I won't raise my child in a world that isn't his own. Void finally cried out as his tears fell from his oval-shaped eyes. As that last retort crashed and fell against Core's mind, something in the older Novason snapped. His billowing rage and tempted energy couldn't be contained anymore. What he did was justified in his eyes, and for Void to take offense to his years of work, let alone compare it to the very thing that started this domino effect, set his energy spikes into an overdrive.
This is not the same!
Core roared as his body suddenly changed before everyone's eyes. Exploding out from his abdomen, stretched and collected out a wave of dark matter sludge that pulsated with orange hints of power within. The slime itself quickly engulfed Core's leg and raised him up to be 4 feet taller than his natural 8'10" build. In shock, Void gasped in fright and reached down to pick up a visibly terrified Joby and Gluppy into his arms. All while he, Atlas, and Evelyn watched on in shock to the rest of Core's sudden rage-filled transformation. His mechanical outer plates looked to bulge and grow in size as the darkness within his body contorted him into a disgusting shape. His matter-like legs bent backwards into a canine form, while his arms grew to the size of Void's regular body. Sharp crystallized orange matter spikes then protruded from Core's elbows, bits of his legs, and 2 rows across the sides of his spine, all shimmering a flame-shaded glow that sparked with an energized heat. Then at last, Core's head grew in size and changed with a ripping tear. The older Novason closed both of his eyes and opened his mouth wide, unnaturally so, revealing what looked to be a bright orange eyeball within. As his eye emerged, Core's 4 horns stretched and elongated into the shape of long, crooked antlers that ignited the same fiery haze that resided within his body. As Core's new and disgusting form settled before the shock of everyone in the room, the now monstrous-looking spark threw his newly grown and burning hands out to his sides, and then bellowed with a deep and powerful voice that rattled everyone within the room.
I have worked years upon years through trials and errors to get us to this very moment. The glitches had no purpose in their destruction, but I do. What I have done is to save our legacy, our lineage. For that to happen, sacrifices have to be made. Necessary sacrifices to make it ends meet.
The beastly spark roared, while riling the experiments within the vats up like a cheering crowd.
I don't care what you think is right and wrong, because the truth is, little brother, that we have worked too hard to back off now. So stop thinking about your wife and unborn half-breed for 1 goddamn second and open your eyes to what's more important.
Core boasted with fury, but in turn, left the room falling silent to what he had just said. What did you just say? Void asked as he eyed the disgusting form of Core's clearly dark matter-infested body. After a long moment of silence, Core's monstrous form looked to suddenly realize what he had just said, for his rage subsided and resorted to that of a regretful stare with his large orange eyeball.
I didn't mean to.
Core quietly expressed as his body slowly reverted back to normal with the look of sheer unease on display.
I didn't mean to say that.
Core repeated with regret as he eyed Void with his regular stare that the smaller spark knew that held a darker intent within. Don't be afraid. Core asked towards his brother and daughter as the two backed off with horrified and hurt expressions. Half-breed? Huh? Void repeated back to the insulting word towards his unborn baby that cut into his heart deeper than he'd like to admit. Not a niece or nephew. You don't even acknowledge it as your future family member? Is that what you consider them as? Void asked as he pressed himself and Joby up against the glass window that overlooked the death machine's interior. No, of course not. Like, you know I would never... I didn't mean to say that. I didn't want the truth to be let out this way. Please, just come back and... Void, just let go of my daughter, please. Core asked as he slowly walked forward, all while Atlas and Evelyn watched on, unsure of what to do. Whimpering, Joby shoved her head in the Void's shoulder, all while shaking with a deep sense of fear towards the father who claimed to love her deeply. But in truth, Void realized that Core, although believing himself right and loving in his own way, was in truth not so much of a good father after all. The way he tried to reason his actions, although in hopes to keep his daughter healthy, only brought forth a sense of living that truly wasn't as such. The impression Void felt was that Joby was an overprotected belonging for Core. No child should be subjected to such torture, even if it was in order to keep her healthy per se. Void knew in that moment that he needed to not just get Joby away from Core, but himself. He had to get back home. Void, please just let me explain. I promise this isn't as bad as it seems. Core pleaded again as Void glanced from him and then to the window behind himself, thinking of the only thing he could do in that moment. No, because I have a feeling that's going to be too hard to explain. Void retorted before suddenly making his move. Throwing his right arm out at his side, Void deployed his battle axe and turned with a violent and electrical swirl. With the flash of a speeding bullet, he shattered the glass behind himself and leapt out, holding on to Joby and Gluppy with a tight and protective instinct. Wait! Core shouted aloud with a fear-stricken cry as he ran towards the broken open glass with Evelyn and Atlas in tow. Mateer's might! The sharp-tailed Spark exclaimed out in shock as the three looked over the ledge with stunned eyes, watching as Void and the smaller Spark dropped several stories down. Hang on, kid! The younger Novason exclaimed with strain as he raised his axe up and slashed it into the side of the nearby wall. Using this to slow their fall, Void went down and down at a lowering speed until at last, he safely dropped to a roll upon one of the walkways below. Cut off all energy transfers! Don't let them escape! Core demanded towards both Atlas and Evelyn before he himself leapt from the ledge's top. Car! The four-legged Spark bellowed towards his best friend, but the older Novason had already made his decision. As Void sprinted and leapt down towards even lower pathways, Core, with a panicking face, extended his matter spikes to his arm and slashed them into the wall, using it to slide down akin to how Void did with his axe. It was clear that to the remaining Sparks above, that alliances had drastically shifted. Are you okay? Void asked as he retracted his axe mid-stride, looking over his shoulder at the Joby with Gluppy wrapped around her arm.
I'm fine. Hurry and get out of here before they jam your systems.
The Sparklet cried, just as a loud, booming voice echoed across the reformatter.
Internal spark sorcery shift deactivated. Please await further reactivation.
The voice rang out as a wave of painless red scans erode from the glowing energy tubes and cables that scattered around the ship's form. Once these scans touched the Sparks, it jammed their systems into a firewall-like state, only to be reactivated once they left the reformatter.
Too late.
Joby weakly muttered in defeat as Void tried to summon an escape portal, only to find that it had been jammed by the signal radiating out of the reformatter's power cells. What the hell? He asked while bashing his portal opener against his hand, all while the callings of Core erupted from behind.
Void, stop running! Please!
He pleaded while dropping to the first platform below with an orange ray of energy trailing behind his body. Scowling back at him, Void summoned forth his battle mask and sealed it over Joby's face, for if they were to escape, it would have to involve some serious evading skills. I'm getting you out of here, kid. Don't worry, Void assured with a parental tone as he held onto her tightly and ran forwards down a long and narrow path. From all around, the drones with bug-like wings turned their sights upon the fleeing sparks, as a signal to detain them was transported into their minds, via a command given out by Core.
Stop them!
He yelled as globs of muck and sweat trailed behind him upon the once shiny floor.
If you go lower, you'll find a set of exits that lead outside. You can fly, right?
Joby asked as Void began to hurtle over rails to lower levitating walkways. You alright with flying? Void asked back as Core began to catch up from a few floors above. His horns were ignited back into their fiery orange haze, while his legs returned to their primal matter shapes, giving him a speed advantage that Void quickly took notice of.
I'd rather be anywhere than here.
Joby called back, while Gluppy answered with another gorp. Nodding, Void looked to his side and took notice of a pair of wires that stretched all the way down past the mainline walkways, going all the way down to lower and more cylindrical platforms that surrounded the glowing spike below. It was the same spike that would ignite the blast to drain a world. Now that Void was closer, he realized just how massive it was. If he were to come back and try and stop this, there'd be no way in doing it alone, he reckoned. Taking a breath, Void closed off these thoughts and got ready to jump down, when suddenly he felt a sensation pulling him back. As this happened, Joby shrieked with a scream of terror as Core, from afar, outstretched his hand that elongated into a dark black and orange glowing tendril. With a radiating, atomic burning essence, Core had gripped his hold around Joby's arm and attempted to pull her right out of Void's.
Stop running! Please just listen to me!
Core bellowed like a broken record as he pulled with all his might to get his daughter back.
Ow! Let go of me! It hurts!
Joby whined while Gluppy began to freak out with a screaming wail.
Joby!
Void bellowed with fear as he fought back against his brother's pull.
Let go of her, Void!
Core cried out to his younger brother, who glared upon him with a betrayed stare.
Do that yourself!
The younger Nova Son retorted while deploying one of his Nova Blades. Raising it back, Void closed his eyes, knowing that it would hurt his brother, but he had no choice. With a wincing slash down, Void rammed his crimson blue blade into the thick skin of Core's tendril, tearing open a nasty wound that caused his eyes to widen like saucers. With a pained scream, the older Nova Son let go with a recoiling throwback, in turn, sending Void with Joby and Gluppy falling over the rail, the two smaller of which screaming in sudden fright.
Hang on!
Void assured with a burning confidence as he retracted his blade and held Joby and Gluppy close to his chest. Closing his eyes, Void began to take the blunts of the fall. His back smashed itself in the pipes and extending metals. He felt his metallic skin dent and scratch to the free fall. His fabric pieces ripped, while his boots got scuffed, all up until hitting a lower platform hard, backside down.
Uncle Void!
Joby gasped out as she sat up from the blue spark's hold. Wincing with a growing pain in his back, Void coughed and wheezed before slowly sitting upright. Scratch marks and dents now covered his metallic body, all while slight trickles of blue blood spilled from a small gash near his backside abdomen.
Are you okay?
Joby asked in a panic as she got off her uncle and began to help him stand with a hoist in his hand.
Easy, kid. Give me a second.
Void groaned as he stumbled upon one knee. He had even spat out a tooth.
We don't have a second! We gotta move!
The Sparklet wailed as several of the flying robots around the reformator began to swarm in a downwards formation, looking ready to throw hands with tiny electrical blasters emerging from their chests.
Joby, cover your ear holes.
Void asked as he stood tall and activated his two arm blasters. Huddling down and covering the sides of her head, Joby, with Gluppy upon her back, closed their eyes while Void took aim and fired. First shot, one out. Second shot, off with her head. Third shot, split in two. The final shot, triple head strike, one dropping after the other in one singular row. Retracting his blasters, Void turned back down and helped Joby stand to her feet. His heart was racing and his mind was buzzing with so many thoughts. But right now, his only focus was getting Joby and himself out of the once thought to be place of hope.
Wait!
The sound of Core's voice echoed from above, desperate, filled with adrenaline. It was time to move. Come on. Void scoffed out as he took Joby by her hand and began to speed walk his way around the cylinder platform. all up until noticing one of the exits Joby had been referring to.
Over there!
She beckoned, setting Void even faster on what had to be broken feet. His entire body hurt from the fall. Worst of all was his shattered trust. He still couldn't fully believe it. All of this felt unreal, staged almost. It was like some kind of test or elaborate joke. He was devastated, in a forever state of shock. Joby, what the hell was going on with your father? What he turned into? Was it dark matter? Void asked as they trudged their way towards the door that was an arched shape with a warning sign above it.
Father always ran experiments on himself when he knew they were safe to use. It's like a buff? Intimidation display? I don't know. Whatever it is, it makes him stronger. I don't like it.
Joby explained as they reached the door. Yeah, I agree. Void replied as he attempted to push the door open, only to find it locked. Scowling with an annoyed huff, Void charged his free hand up with an electrical surge and punched the slab of metal right into its center, blowing it back and out into the outer world. Let's go. Void affirmed as he, Joby, and Gluppy marched their way out into an unexpected platform. Stepping out into frigid cold air and wind, Void held on to Joby's hand as tight as he could, for they were now outside the reformator and near its lowest ring. Connecting to the large piece of metal were several walkways that extended to the large, pulsating rounded plate itself. A perfect launching point to drop back to the world below, Void reckoned. Come on, kiddo. Let's go. The spark gently spoke as he began to walk Joby and Gluppy down the long and wide bridge that led to the orange glowing ring.
Void!
Core suddenly called, causing Void to instantly put Joby behind himself and stand firm, acting as her guardian angel once again. Pulling himself forward with long, dark tendrils, Core leapt from the doorway and landed upon the bridge, being half transformed into his matter state, yet remaining a normal-looking face on display.
Stop running! I just want to talk!
Core pleaded once more, with a hand outstretched towards his brother and daughter, who were backing away with fear in their eyes. I think we've talked enough. Void spat as his body surged with rays of electricity. Core looked devastated, hurt. His mind was bouncing back and forth on what he needed to do. All he wanted in that moment was for his family to come back to him, to understand him. Yet the look of terror within his eyes made him realize that things were not going to be as smooth sailing as he had wished.
Whatever cruel thoughts you may have for me, I assure you that I've already said them to myself.
Core began as he slowly inched his way forward upon his slimy, bent legs.
You don't think I feel anything when having to destroy those worlds? Having to make the hard decision?
Core continued, trying to bring the two of them back.
From what you went on about earlier, I highly doubt it.
Void retorted as they slowly neared the ring's spinning form.
Void, stop running and think! If this world is extracted, no more will need to be drained. Our people will thrive again. Our species will be saved from the brink of extinction. Do you sincerely not want that anymore? After all we have accomplished together?
Core asked as sweat pooled down Void's brow.
Of course I would! Damn it, I've dreamt of a possibility! But to do it in this way, to kill for one's selfish needs, that's not what I stand for. That's not what the Sparks stand for.
The younger Novason bellowed as the wind began to pick up in speed. The two brothers were now less than 10 feet apart, all while the moon glimmered brightly in between the both of them. If Mother and Father were still around, do you think they actually would have stood for this?
They swore an oath. They all swore an oath for the safety of all realities along with their worlds. Yet here you stand, doing the exact opposite. This isn't honor, Core. This is a disservice.
The younger Novason ranted as he and Joby shuffled backwards upon the slowly rotating metal ring, with Core following right after.
This is the only way, Void. I've come too far to stop now. Please don't make this any more difficult than it already is.
Groaned the orange-crested spark with hurt eyes as his arms began to bulge and shimmer with orange light.
Cor, you don't have to do this.
Void tried to reason as Cor closed his eyes and turned his head to the side in response. The state of confliction was visible within the older Novasun. He looked to both be torn by his own mission and the love he held for the two before himself. Void could still see that he didn't want to harm them, but in truth, he had already stabbed them with a blade of lies and deception.
I have to. I made a promise to myself to fix this. And I don't intend on breaking my oath, whether you're on my side or not!
Cor boasted before suddenly lurching forward. Shooting out from his back came forth a pair of tendrils with clawed, slimy hands at their ends, reaching for both Void as well as Joby. Reacting fast, Void brought forth his spear and slashed away at the unnaturally long limbs, slicing one hand off after the other, while Joby screamed in fright.
Joby, get down!
Void commanded as he leapt forward and slashed apart several more of the hands to Cor's dismay. Yelling in response, Void's older brother retracted his tendrils and proceeded to extend his right arm out. With sharp claws, he reached past the spear strike and gripped the left-hand side of Void's cheek in a sudden blind rage. Within seconds, the smaller spark felt the burning sensation of molten claws digging right into his side, leaving a gash to open and gush blood out into the moonlight.
Cor, stop!
Void cried out in pain as he was slowly dragged towards his older brother. His spear retracted as electricity ceased, as everything went numb.
Uncle Void!
Joby called as she looked on with horror to the scene. Void tried to fight back, but the pain in his cheek sent a paralyzing surge that he couldn't fight into his body.
This hurts me more than it hurts you!
Cor shouted with a disheartened and regretful stare as he tried to subdue Void and knock him out with a dark matter essence. As Joby watched on, her fear slowly contorted into that of a billowing rage, one that caused her yellow-striped forehead and horns to glow with a bright light matter essence.
Let go of him!
Joey bellowed as she raised her hand back and then swung it forward, sending out a long strain of burning light matter that sliced Cor's right arm clean off with an exploding mass of goo, blood, and sparks. Yelling in agony, Cor and Void fell away from one another, both shocked to the sudden display of power from Joby. Cor's right arm then clanked hard upon the ring, while he himself returned to normal and clutched the severed bleeding stump that was cut at the elbow. Returning back to her normal state as well, Joby stared on in horrified shock at what she had done. Looking down to her hands, she suddenly began to shake and welled up with tears, petrified to the act she had committed upon her own father.
Joby!
Void weakly called as he regained his footing and scooped both her and Gluppy into his arms.
No! Don't go!
Cor wailed with a mixture of emotions as he slowly got upon his hands and knees. Looking at his older brother and then down to the sobbing little girl in his arms, Void turned back to his brother with a scowling shake in his head.
This isn't over,
he mentioned before running forward and jumping off the ring, leaving Cor to scream in both rage and sadness to the circumstances, watching as both his brother and daughter disappeared within the clouds. Groaning with a shaken breath, Cor weakly stood back up upon his feet and trudged over to the ledge where the two had leapt from. Reaching down with a grunt, Cor picked up his severed arm and hoisted it back to where it was before. Extending out from his wound emerged smaller black-orange tendrils and veins that began to quickly reconnect Cor's arm upon his body, like it had even been severed to begin with. While healing himself, he stood over the ledge and looked down towards the sea of clouds that went on for miles. As he did, his heart began to race, and his anger soon took fold. Why didn't he listen? Cor asked within, as he opened his mouth and released a pained scream into the vastness of Aurora's cold, wintry night. Why didn't he listen? His lawyer repeated, as the air gently caressed him into a freezing hug. Falling down at a rapid speed, Void held Joby as close to his body as he could, all while they passed through the clouds and back into the terrible weather conditions. Snow, sleet, and hail roared down at a violent pace that pelted Void hard in the face, as well as his body in the worst ways possible. His brain felt to be on autopilot with the one goal in his mind: get home, get to safety, is all he told himself while deploying his wings. Yet as he did, something wrong quickly made itself known. The wing that the Hebi had fried, Void had completely forgotten to repair it, meaning only one thing: they were gonna crash. Scrap, 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 scrap! Void cursed as he quickly began to think of a plan. Joby, huddle yourself and your pet as close as you can. One of my wings are down, which means all I got is a portal to stop us from becoming crushed tomatoes. Void explained as he checked to see if the firewall was still up, and to his relief, it wasn't. Keep your eyes closed, kid. Just don't look, and it'll all be smooth sailing. Void yelled to his niece as she shoved her head firmly to the side of his hoodie, all while keeping Gluppy snug as well. As the forest below grew larger and larger, Void reared his arm around, having to fight against the heavy winds that bat against his falling form. Deciding upon where to go, Void readied the shot, and as he bridged the gap to the first tree, he fired a star-shaped portal down that led to the outside of Nox's workshop. Huddling himself into a ball, Void closed his eyes and felt the sheer weight of the impact strike him hard. Coming out and crashing through snow at a sideways angle, Void practically barrel-rolled and went smashing across the pavement. Parts of his outer body shattered and broke off. The left side hash to his arm went flying. The back of his hoodie completely tore off. His right side shoulder sphere snapped apart to reveal the large gear inside, while even his left leg shattered into a mangled set of wire and metals that sent blue blood spilling everywhere, all up until ending with a hard smash against Nox's car that dented his side but left Void alive by some kind of miracle. Weakly opening his eyes and shivering to the hellstorm that rained down upon his body, Void wheezed and winced with pain as tears streamed down his face. Pools of blood spilled from his shattered leg, but that didn't matter. What was more important was who he had been trying to protect. Thankfully, she looked up with tears in her eyes without a scratch. Joby. Void weakly said her name as Joby herself shook her head in a wordless cry. Looking past his niece, Void could see the cars of Sarv, Tucker, as well as Kotz, showing that they had all shown up, presumably awaiting for his return to head out for dinner. Taking a breath in through his teeth and finding his strength, Void, with one working leg, pushed himself up and practically began to hobble over towards the door. A river of spark blood spilled from the wounds of his body, but Void kept going. He couldn't stop now, he told himself. Joby needed to get out of the storm. He needed to warn Jida and the others. There was so much he needed to explain, so much that his brain could barely comprehend. He needed her. Jida! Open the door! Void screamed out in a cry as he practically smashed himself into the wooden plaque with his shoulder. Knock! Anyone! Open the damn door! Void shrieked out like a banshee as he heard the rapid sounds of footsteps approaching on the other side. With a rapid click, the latch of the door unlocked and the knob turned with a quick swing. Standing there with a nervous and curious look stood Jida, who instantly covered her mouth and screamed in shock upon the state of her husband. Void! She cried with wide eyes as everyone else who was in the workshop's lobby area reacted in their own ways. Void! Nock croaked out in shock while Tucker cursed out to the grisly sign display. By Matira! Creator! Jet bellowed as he quickly kicked into immediate nurse mode, all while Kot and Sarv stared on with horrified eyes. Blue! Joby! Oh my god! What happened? What the hell happened? Jetta asked in a panic as Void practically fell into her arms. Cor lied. Void weakly revealed as everyone in the room scrambled to both the Spark's aid. Even Pawfu ran up with a look of sheer worry in her eyes. What? Jetta asked as Void began to slump under his own weight. Joby was right. I made a mistake. We're all in danger. Void groaned as a sleepy sensation began to overtake him. He's hurt. Help him, please. Joby choked out as Sarv came over and gently took the little girl, who was sobbing, into her arms.
What do you mean? What do you mean we're in danger?
Jada asked as Void, now in the comfort of his wife's warm embrace, slowly passed out from the rush of emotions in his heart.
Void? Void, do not pass out on us now! Void!
Jada demanded, all while the spark suddenly fell into a world of darkness, hearing the echoed confusion of all those within the room. With slow and echoing footfalls, Kor marched his way up towards the vat of matter that shimmered with a bright and almost devilish glow of orange, radiating the drawing essence that had changed the course of his life forever. Slowly emerging from its sides, approached both Atlas and Evelyn, who looked on with worry towards their friend, who now looked, for the lack of a better term, dead. His face was sluggish, tired and numb. All he could think was why Void wouldn't listen. If his brother hadn't been so panicky, he could have reasoned and explained better, Kor told himself. And again, how does one justify a mass killing without sounding like the villain? Kor felt shattered. He had hurt his brother in one way he figured would have happened in another. And Joby, his own daughter, was now out in the world for the very first time. But what would their relationship become from this? What would happen going forward? He questioned, all while his heart beat at a cold and angered pace.
Kor?
Alice asked as the older Novason walked in between the two of them and upon the Mattervat's control deck.
Kor, where are they?
Evelyn asked as the older Novason shifted the Mattervat and the surrounding floor around it to rise. Like an elevator, the sparks and the massive tube of energy slowly ascended towards the very top of the Reformattor's build, in preparation for what needed to be done, what Kor needed to finish.
They'll come crawling back soon enough. It's time to finish what we started. Like always, once we reach the top, you two prepare for anchoring.
Kor expressed, leaving both Atlas and Evelyn to just eye one another with worry.
We begin extraction at the heart of Aurora City. I'd prefer it if we do it there than get Void and all those he cares about on board. I don't want them down there during the drill. He may not see it now, but this is the only way. I don't care if he hates me for it. We need to finish this.
Kor expressed as they entered a diamond-cleared dome control roof of the very top of the Reformatter. Glints of electrical orange and blues buzzed off the glass, as pillars and control spikes extended to larger walkways that overlooked the Mattervat, all while it shimmered beautifully in the moonlight. With a shaken tone, Atlas stared upon the back of his best friend, and then looked down to the beads around his neck, the beads gifted to him by the people of Leo, the people he helped to protect. Raising a hand up, he fiddled with them, but soon enough returned back the focus upon Kor, needing to speak loud and clear for what was in his mind.
Kor, what if Void's right? What if this is wrong?
He asked, looking to question the older Novason's thought process and authority.
Excuse me?
He asked, while looking over his shoulder, all with a bright glowing pair of orange eyes that sent a wave of nausea into Atlas's stomach.
You heard me. What if this isn't worth it anymore? What if there's a different way to go about this? Another way we can...
Whirling around with an angered huff, Kor transformed to his monstrous matter form and lashed his right clawed hand around Atlas's left largest horn in a tight and painful hold.
Don't you start with me, Scrape! I've had it with these back and forth woes of death and honor today!
Kor exclaimed as he violently tugged Atlas down with a horn-cracking jerk.
Tears might! Kor, stop!
Evelyn shrieked as she ran to aid her lover, but the older Novason wasn't having it. Reaching out his right hand, he caught Evelyn by the throat and threw her to the ground, leaving Atlas petrified to Kor's sudden shift in attitude.
Baby!
He shouted, all while Kor yanked his head down further with a burning sensation.
You have both been by my side since the first extraction. Are you really gonna back out now, after everything we've done together?
Kor asked as his massive eyeball radiated with a burning heat wave of energy.
We've worked too hard to just walk away. We will not throw out all these years of trial and errors over some change of heart. You and Evelyn are just as responsible as I am.
Cor exclaimed with one more harsh jerk down upon Alice's head.
Now get your heads out of your asses and help me finish what we started.
With an awkward toss, Cor threw Alice aside and in turn broke off his left side horn.
Atlas!
Evelyn shrieked as the four-legged spark crashed to her waist side, yelling and groaning with sheer pain to his shattered horn.
What the shit?
Alice whined as Evelyn held him close. Stepping forward towards them and throwing his arms out to his sides, Cor released a deafening roar upon the lovebirds, solidifying his authority and driving the fear of Matira into their hearts. Leaving them shaken and shocked to his sudden display of aggression, Cor slowly turned with a growl and reapproached the matter vat with sets of heavy footfalls. Shrinking back down the sighs, he stood firm and gazed into his reflection, looking at the monster he tried so hard to say wasn't there. Tears were stricken at the edges of his eyes as the world felt to slowly crash around him. From behind, Alice and Evelyn slowly stood back up and shoveled their way out to the anchors, knowing that deep down, Cor was right. They were just as responsible as he was, and they couldn't just back out now. They had forged their chains. It was best to keep it that way, they reasoned, even if the restraints hurt around their limbs.
I'll see you soon, brother.
Cor weakly said towards the matter vat, knowing that once they broke, everything would change.